Very good evening to you. Welcome to another Newsmaker Live broadcast right here on DBS Television. My name is Timothy Poole and we'll be together until 10 o'clock this evening, at which time we'll be concluding with the clip that peaked. In just a moment, we'll be taking a very in-depth look into the local business sector and the business community, some of the challenges and the successes. Just recently, the St. Lucia Chamber of Commerce did provide the St. Lucian public with some information regarding its sales and saying that things are improving. And also the same Chamber of Commerce recently met with the Minister with responsibility for commerce and spoke about some of the challenges and did make a few requests of that government minister. But first, yesterday, St. Lucians got a bit of a scare coming from the Speaker of the St. Lucia House of Assembly, who took ill during the proceedings of the House last evening. And this certainly would have caused a firestorm in terms of recrimination involving both opposition and government MPs as they continue to debate and haggle over the appointment of a deputy speaker. The government is saying at this juncture a deputy speaker is not essential. The opposition is saying otherwise, and the opposition is also saying that it is the responsibility of one of the 11 elected MPs to take up that particular position. The government is saying that the opposition, on the other hand, should sacrifice one of its 6 MPs. Amidst all that, up until this evening, we had not heard from the Speaker of the St. Lucia House of Assembly, Mrs. Leon Theodore John, and we heard from her during the DBS News World Tonight. In case you missed it, let us start the broadcast with a report from Sheffield Gillard.
Prime Minister Alan Chastanet said various countries the world over, the Deputy Speaker is usually chosen from the opposition. The Prime Minister was speaking in the context of Tuesday's sitting in the House, in which the Speaker of the House, Leon Theodore John, fell ill and had to be hospitalized.
At the end of the day, in order to be a deputy speaker, a person cannot hold a cabinet portfolio. And so the precedents have been established all over the world in which opposition people are the deputy.
That was the wrong report from DBS's Don Nicholas, so my producers tell me that he will attempt now to get the correct one from Sheffield Gillard, and we'll be hearing from the Speaker of the St. Lucia House of Assembly, Mrs. Leon Theodore John. We hear from her right now through that report.
Discharged Wednesday morning, the House Speaker dismissed rumors that she suffered a heart attack. Recounting events that took place in Parliament Tuesday night, Theodore John said she felt exhausted and drained.
The truth be told, I actually felt chest pain and like there was difficulty breathing. I did not know what it is, and it was very painful. So I was taken to the hospital, where I was treated. Dr. Daniel, cardiologist Dr. Daniel was there. We did all of the EKGs. He also did a heart scan. All my valves are normal. There is nothing about a heart attack. He ruled all of that out. This morning I did a stress test before he relieved me. My blood pressure, however, is very high. And he gave me, he released me this morning and gave me some medication, and I went home. Rumors about a heart attack or whatever, I did not suffer a heart attack. I was feeling some tightness in my chest, but it had nothing to do with a heart attack. Not every tightness in the chest is a heart attack. I think I was suffering from mental and physical fatigue and exhaustion.
Despite not having a deputy speaker to relieve her, Mrs. Theodore John says her fatigue was not as a result of pressure from Parliament. She attributes it to her recent travels overseas, coupled with her Journée Creole activities. This latest incident has prompted fresh calls for the appointment of a deputy speaker. However, neither the government nor the opposition wants to nominate a suitable candidate. Opposition leader Philip Pierre says while he empathizes with the speaker, the opposition is not interested in the deputy speaker position.
Never in the Convention of Parliament, Sir John Compton, who is the father of the nation, anytime he was in government, with the exact same situation, he appointed a deputy speaker. The Prime Minister wants to make every one of his members ministers. He's presiding over the largest cabinet in the history of St. Lucia. It's his responsibility. The opposition has said to him, we are not interested in the position of deputy speaker, and our position holds. The women of this country must understand the deputy speaker is a woman. All of us can leave Parliament at any time to go to the washroom, but she can't. I feel very sorry for her, but that's the situation that her government has put her in.
The House is without a deputy and it requires a deputy, which I have said. However, demanding a deputy is not my place to demand a deputy. It is the parliamentarians who have to understand that there is need for a deputy.
Sarah Flood Bowbray was appointed Deputy Speaker at the opening of the first session of the 11th Parliament, but subsequently resigned and was appointed External Affairs Minister. For the DBS News World, I am Sheffield Gillard.
Thank you very much, Sheffield. Once again, this report was filed this evening during the DBS News World, and we're happy to be in a position to report that the Speaker of the St. Lucia House of Assembly is doing just fine. We are being told that the House will be meeting on December the 5th to continue the proceedings. We turn our attention now to another issue of great importance to us in St. Lucia, and that is the state of the business community and business activity in St. Lucia on the whole as we observe Business Month, the third annual Business Month, and that is under the theme Promoting an Entrepreneurial Culture, Innovation and Creativity. We have in studio the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Commerce, Mr. Titus Preville. Welcome to the broadcast, sir.
Right, thank you, Tim. Thank you.
Let's talk about what type of entrepreneurial culture that we are imbued with right now in St. Lucia.
Well, I can't say we have done a study, an empirical study to determine or classify our...
But by observation.
By observation.
You have been Director of Commerce and now you're PS in the Ministry of Commerce. I assure you that you would have an inkling.
Yes. I think it is fair to say many things determine where you are. Your history is a very critical part of it. And St. Lucia is history and St. Lucia's realities. It is a small open economy. Small and open means it is engaged in international trade. And as a result of that and our historical orientation, we were always in an environment where we will produce goods, raw materials exported, earned income that went back into imported goods. So the primary makeup of our economy has been one of commerce, trade, or if you want to say distribution services. So, and on the other hand, most of the goods we exported were raw material based, bananas and before that sugar. So our culture has been one mainly of distribution. How much creativity do you need to have to be involved in distribution? But times have moved on, the world has changed, and now we're finding that we're in a situation where for this economy to grow, we need to actually be involved in production of other goods, value-added goods, providing value-added services. Our education system, again, the structure of our education system is highly geared at producing persons who would basically go get a job in the established sector, but not one that is focused on emphasizing the need for you, the person, the student, the one who is going to become part of the economic system, to be a creator of wealth, to be a generator of wealth, and to be happy to own wealth. So you look at the education system, you look at your historical context, you look at your laws. Our laws don't favor or don't encourage failure or tolerate failure. What is our bankruptcy legislation like? When a person attempts a business and the person has failed, the society, in a small society like ours, you're looked at as a failure, as opposed to someone who tried did not succeed but will get up and try again, you are looked at as a failure. Entrepreneurship and entrepreneurs are basically risk takers.
I mean, Bill Gates, Bezos, and eventually those guys will tell you that they became very successful.
And most successful business people were not successful on their first attempt. But you must have an environment that encourages you or allows you to fail and says to you, okay, so you now know this doesn't work. You need to try another method.
So based on what you just said there, it stands to reason that those people who have been presiding over the affairs of state, I mean governments, in terms of the foundation that they set, those foundations were not sufficiently strong or conducive for business activity to take place. And maybe on the other hand, also out of ignorance, maybe we allowed people from overseas to come in and to exploit our resources from the UK, from the US and so on. And that will include not only the raw material, but our financial resources as well. We know of many people who came into St. Lucia without any wealth at all. And within a short period of time, they were able to amass some wealth that would cause them to stand out prominently for one reason or the other, and for them then to provide menial jobs, has been suggested, to a number of the citizenry, and those people could have been employers.
Yeah, and again, Tim, the thing is, it's your approach. It is the conceptual approach. It's not the fault of, it's not a matter of casting blame, it's a matter of analyzing, understanding, and saying, how do we move forward? You have a historical context of slavery. You have a historical context of who had and who did not have. And therefore you have to ask yourself, where you come from, a culture where you do not own, a society where you do not own much assets. The primary asset you have is yourself, your human being. What do? You need to turn that human being into something productive. That is done through education and training. So did our governments fail to do that? I would say no, they succeeded in large measure, because the level of literacy in St. Lucia compared to the 1920s and 30s to today is chalk and cheese. The performance of our people in terms of the quality of the students we produce, in terms of where our people have reached academically, miles apart. We have two Nobel laureates.
But Mr. Previll, are those people creative?
But
are they innovative?
I'm coming to the point. I'm saying this. You look at where you started. So you started with people who did not have much but got educated, but the education was focused not just in St. Lucia, throughout the Caribbean. The education was focused on you having something that you go to an employer to contribute, in return for which you got paid a salary or a wage.
But even now, Mr. Breville, people are complaining about the quality of students that we are producing. We are producing students just with an academic background and so on, and they cannot function effectively in the workplace.
Well, because the workplace itself has changed over time. So, but has our education system changed in step with that changing world? The answer is no. So here we are. Years later, we have an education system that produces people, but not in a way that people are taught to be creative and to think and to undertake things. But it's deeper than that. You have an economic space that does not really facilitate and allow and encourage innovative thinking. How does your banking sector react to a new idea? They tell you need to have collateral, and for new businesses, small businesses growing, they don't have the collateral, and so you're caught between. And there are many great ideas out there, and people who are innovative, but they cannot get their businesses funded. Now, so you have the ecosystem for entrepreneurs that is, from the training and education side, not so strong. The financial side not so strong. The societal, in terms of accepting failure and reaching out, and that's not so strong. So a business person operating in this environment, an entrepreneur, is a real risk taker. and that person needs to have or persons like that need to have support. And then there is the other aspect to our environment that is critical. We don't work with each other. Persons don't share with each other for some reason.
Well, there's lack of trust.
Lack of trust.
And don't you think this is well founded in most cases?
In many cases, but we need to move past that. Persons want to have their own, and that's great, but sometimes it's better to own part of a huge business
That is successful.
than to own the 100% of a business that is small and not so successful. Yeah, I own 100% of a $1 business. I'm a full owner. But if I own 10% of a $100 business, now I have $10. Shouldn't I own 10% of a $100 business instead? Makes sense. I have a business idea, but I don't have the funding and I don't have the know-how in terms of implementation. Can I bring the funding and the know-how together? And for me to own 1/3 of that business, maybe I should, but we don't collaborate in that manner.
Shouldn't the authorities, in this case the Ministry of Commerce, lead the way? Who will be leading the way in terms of ensuring that we change the landscape and we change the mindset? Does it start with the financial institutions? Does it start with the Ministry of Commerce? Does it start or continue to be a situation where people with the ideas, they have the ideas, but they're bereft of the finances, and they continue to be in a state of serious desperation and not knowing exactly what to do? I'm sure that many of the young people will eventually turn to a life of crime. Initially, they were well intentioned in terms of wanting to come up with a particular initiative, that they tried to get the assistance that was just not forthcoming.
Well, it's not just young people. I want to be very careful here. We have young people, but we have persons who have been in business, who have failed, mature people. The Ministry of Commerce is its responsibility. It must take the lead on that, and that's what it has been doing. We have a system in the ministry that is geared towards working with small businesses and larger businesses. We do that, and we can do that by public education, by helping persons understand that here are the steps you need to take if you were to get your business off the ground, helping you with your business plans, helping you with doing what they call mentoring, helping you incorporate your business. We have a legal person in-house to help you incorporate your business and reduce your costs.
But you think there's just too much bureaucracy sometimes? That could serve as an inhibiting factor?
No, that's not a bureaucracy.
Serve as a major discouragement?
No. Why? Because what else will you do? Every society must have discipline, Tim. We don't just shoot off our pants, and you must go through a discipline process. In all the developed countries, whether you're in the US or in Germany, you go through a process.
But most creative people would tell you, we do not have a business plan, and maybe they do not have the finances, they don't have the support.
That's what we offer for free
to venture that in that
and we say
direction.
to you, come in and let us take a look at your business idea, because a business idea is not a business plan. So your business idea needs to be evaluated. Your business idea needs to be turned to whether it is a financially viable business. That's your financial projections. And then the entrepreneur needs to have the discipline to be able to come to the ministry. Just that. Just walk in. Many people don't want to even walk in to say, how can you help me today?
But you necessarily document your plan. Are there instances where, for example, that it's airy, it's something that maybe you cannot touch and so on, something you might not even be able to document per se? But if you had the finances, you would do it on your own without coming up with this bureaucratic levels and layers, a business plan and this and that.
But Tim, that is the fundamentals of no business can exist without some form of structure. It must have some structure.
I'm sure Bill Gates did not have a business plan initially.
But he sat down and he did something. He wrote things, whether he was coding or he was writing, he was putting it down. Now, if you tell me a person has an idea but they don't know how to write it, that's where the Ministry of Commerce comes in. They say, let me take this idea and let me put it down on paper in some format that you can come back to it every now and then. You can perhaps even revise it. And let me check this business idea, put it in a format that we can perhaps try to see whether we can get funding for it. Because when you go to your financiers, your bank or your credit union, or even your brother or sister, they want to see something. Because one of the ways small businesses get funding is through family and friends. But when you go to your family or a friend or someone and you say, I have this idea, people want to see the idea in some form that they can say, okay, so when you do that, you get this. Okay, I can understand. So it comes down to the discipline of putting it down on paper. So that's what the Ministry of Commerce does. We have actually in place right now, and we've had for a long time, SEDU, Small Enterprise Development Unit. And we're now taking this SEDU, and St. Lucia is one of the countries at the forefront on the program called the Small Business Development Center. It is a program that is being run or implemented throughout the CARICOM, St. Lucia, Jamaica, Barbados, and Dominica, who are the pioneers working with the University of Texas at San Antonio. Through the OAS, support from the Organization of American States, we've been pioneering the Small Business Development Center model. And what this does is it helps us reduce the number of the level of duplication that we have in our system, because persons go to different entities for services not knowing that you can go to one place. It helps in the process of referrals. So for instance, Timothy Polio has this idea and he says, well, I don't know where to go, but let me go to Bank of St. Lucia. So he goes to Bank of St. Lucia and says, I have this business idea. The bank says, look, Tim, your idea needs to be fleshed out a bit more. But the bank doesn't say where to go to do it. You know better off. But through the Small Business Development Center, what we've done is we have a network of partners who invariably interface with persons involved in business, whether it be the credit union, the financial institutions, a business support organization. We have that in our Dear Forever. But so these persons can then be referred to the ministry to get this support.
Despite those structures, why do you believe that the majority of people are left crestfallen and they're disappointed when, for example, whatever business ideas that they have are very often rejected for one reason or the other? And also, the financial institutions continue to boast about being liquid. They have a lot of money in the system, but yet still they are not lending to those upstarts, those people who want to set up a particular business for one reason or the other. Maybe because they do not have a record of being employed, or they do not have assets, they do not have money in the bank. Why should those inhibiting factors continue to dog those people?
From the perspective of the bank, they say to you, the monies that they have, they hold in trust. It's not their money, it's your money and my money. And therefore... And
they determine what the interest they give us.
Yes.
Right?
And
which is next to nothing.
But more than that, they have to make sound business decisions. So they say to you, look, the bank's money is not the bank's money. It is somebody's money. And if we're going to lend it to you, we must be reasonably assured that you will give us our money back and with something.
So why they squander the people's money so often when they lend money to other business entities that fail to the tune of millions of dollars, but the poor man is just asking for a few $1,000s, and yet they're saying no to him?
Well, sometimes, Tim, it is what you present. That's why I say to you,
so
what you present.
We're talking about a plan.
Absolutely.
So those people who fail to the tune of millions of dollars, they presented a plan.
They presented a plan.
Right. What kind of plan was that?
And it is up to the that's why the institutions are held responsible, because at the end of the day, you have made a bad business decision as a bank. Or you might say, well, hold on, there was an externality. Something happened that was not envisaged at the time we were lending you this money, and it has caused some catastrophic impact on your business. So there
you know what it is. There's a lot of BS, right?
I understood. But that is what the bank would be able to go back and say, look, when we did all our risk analysis, we saw the investment was looking as a viable investment. That's what, because you would have to have your risk analysis done and so forth. With the small business person, the problem we have, and I say it's a problem, but it's also it takes change in the mindset of our financial institutions. the research shows that most small business initiatives fail within the first year. Now, these are statistics that are there. Question: how do you get the financial institutions with that fact to ignore it somehow and just lend? They won't. The opposite to that is that some of those businesses that they lend the millions that fail, they have a track record of having been successful before. So I understand from the perspective of the financial institution the issues they face. However, we need to create a window, some space for small businesses to grow and to fail. Our society must be prepared to accept that sometimes we have to put in some resources into entities with the best of intention, doing the best analysis, but they will fail. And we must not hit ourselves on the head when it happens. Because when all it takes is for a few to succeed, and the implications are huge. So this is really where the Ministry of Commerce comes in.
What would give somebody the courage after they have failed to decide that they want to try again?
The drive. The entrepreneur must have the drive within him to want to succeed. But also, if you have around you an environment that says you've only discovered what you should not do, so now you know you should not do this, and if you have persons around or institutions around that support you, you will want to get up again.
Let's talk about the whole thing about innovation and creativity.
Right.
In St. Lucia, business-wise and in many spheres of activity, we have not reached a point where we want to try new things. Everyone decides that they want to open some restaurant to sell the same food, sell the same drinks. What do you think is preventing us from being creative? Is it an innate fear that we have? We're afraid of trying new things. We are afraid of being innovative. We are afraid of coming up with new ideas that will set us apart.
Innovation and creativity normally comes out of an environment, a culture of support. Why our people do what is it's safe. It is safe to go down the but the truth is we are seeing more and more that there are some persons who are trying new things. We have a new generation of persons who are exposed to a couple of things. One, they've traveled and they've seen how things are. There's nothing more powerful than leaving your country, going somewhere else, seeing how people do things and coming back home with a new approach. So our young people are traveling, our young people are able to see things on television. They are able to research things via YouTube and see how things work. So we have an emerging group of young people in the main who are more and more creative and innovative. I mean, we have a young man who just won the Chamber of Commerce Young Entrepreneur of the Year award. Very, very creative. He took a material, sargassum, and he's turned it into fertilizer. Doing very well. We have young people who are producing fashion. We have people in the creative industries who are creating new rhythms and new songs. You have the Dennery segment, for instance. I mean, so there are creative people among us who are more and more. You'll be seeing more and more of them because they're exposed now to more technology. Now, one of the factors that determine how fast a country changes is its use and adoption of technology. And the easier it is to get technology and assimilate technology, the easier it is to be creative and innovative. So, innovation comes out of a lot of things. One is research. Do we have a culture of research? Do we have a culture of inquiry? Do we have a culture of wanting to see things change? That's where research comes in.
Do you think that therefore the education system should lead the charge in that direction? Because our kids are going to school, it's that environment they would need to nurture themselves. It's not when they get out of school that they should adopt those new approaches.
You see, that is where it should start. Now,
but who will say this to the authorities? Who will say this directly to the Ministry of Education?
Us, the private sector, the people in the private sector, the mothers and fathers who have children.
The private sector to be fair to them, they have not been quiet on this issue. For years now, they've been saying that those students that you're providing me, they are not performing up to scratch, they're not adequate, they are not well suited for the job market.
Now, there are two
and yet
things.
still we're doing the same thing.
Yes. Now we have two things. We have education and we have training. So there is a basic education that everyone should have. And that has nothing to do with a specialized set of skills. But when you have reached that point where a person has a particular level of education, we need to examine the whole issue of technical vocational training. And it is not for persons who are unable to think. It is for persons who are now want to take their education and put it into specific areas of practice. But we have disconnect in our society on many levels. You have the science fair. We've had the school science fair, annual science fair for years. The kids go through a process of thinking, and they create great things. But
What happens to them?
That's the point. but our education system is somehow not seeing the link between the output of the science fair and business. I was told that, you see the cricket stumps.
Yeah.
I was told that when the stumps light up now, when you have cricket at night, your white ball cricket, 2020 cricket, and so a St. Lucian, a young St. Lucian in a science fair program figured out that, hey, if we have a system where when the ball hits the stump or whatever, you can see the person is out there. That is what I understand where this idea came from. Now, was this idea patented? Is that person receiving royalties for this idea? So, when the idea came out, did someone run with it, a solution, or someone saw it from outside and took it? The connection is not there, Tim. So you're looking at a situation where we have a country which understands in the main that it is the private sector that is going to drive the economy. That is what's going to drive. Because we are on a free market system. The private sector must drive the economy. But we have the levels of disconnect are many, at very many different levels. And so we need to put the system together. It'll take a while, but we need to put the system together in a seamless process so everything works together. The education system works together with the private sector, especially the higher education system. They are producing persons who the private sector require. Better manpower planning is important. The private sector itself needs to have within it space for training, and training now means when a person has left a particular level of education and they walk into your private business, you need to treat that person as an asset in your business, and you provide a certain level of training to meet your specific needs. So we have to look at the thing from a complete picture.
You're talking about a long-term plan, and these days every 5 years we have a change of government. So therefore, do you need some kind of permanent structure in place to deal with issues of that nature, irrespective of which government is in office?
I think the last time I checked, all these administrations that come into office say the private sector is the engine of growth. I don't think we have any fundamental philosophical difference within the political parties that form governments in our country. So I should not be seen, or we should not be seeing major shifts. And I don't think in my years in the public service I've seen discontinuity of support for the private sector from any administration. So the work that has to be done right now, there is some work to be done at the policy level, I agree, but there is some work that can be done right now among how the private sector itself organizes itself. Is the private sector speaking to itself enough? We have spoken for a while on the need for a private sector council, for instance, where the Chamber of Commerce, the Manufacturers Association, the Hotel and Tourism Association, the Small Business Association, why don't they sit down as one body? Because, truth be told, if there is growth in any company is growing and doing well in St. Lucia and employing more and more persons, it means more and more persons have disposable income. Yes?
Yeah,
Where will they take this disposable? What will they do? they are going to spend it in the economy. So for me, and how I understand how an economy works, when one person loses a job, it is not the concern only of that person, it is the concern of all other persons who would be benefiting from that person being gainfully employed. So if that is the case, we should be concerned about unemployment, not the government concern. It is a concern that I personally have because I happen to own a shop in Marsha or in Hospital Road, and I need employed people with income to come and buy from me. So I have an interest in people working. Now, if we begin to think of our problem like this, then we have to ask ourselves, but how do we bring ourselves together to cause more people to be employed, team? So the private sector needs to work, and that does not require government. There's a role for government, but that is something that the private sector as different bodies should be sitting down and talking to each other on. We have the biggest engine of growth in our country is the tourism sector. Is that sector speaking in a coherent way with our Chamber of Commerce, with our manufacturers? Are the goods being manufactured? Is our tourism sector saying we want to take as much of these goods into our hotels? Why? Because it means these manufacturers, Baron Foods or Vikings or wherever, they will have to produce more pepper sauce and more hot sauce. It means the farmers will have to produce more. It means the farmers will have disposable income. And guess what? Your hotel may not be filled only people from overseas. They could have your own people in the hotel because they have the disposable income. The economy is one circle. Failure in one section means failure in other sections. You might think you're doing well. You might actually be doing well in a sector. But guess what? You could be doing even better.
You're watching Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television with my guest, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Commerce, Mr. Titus Preville, as we observe the third annual Business Month. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television. My name is Timothy Poulion, and my guest this evening is the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Commerce. This is the third annual Business Month that we're observing right now, and it's under the theme Promoting an Entrepreneurial Culture, Innovation and Creativity. Of course, later we will be taking your calls. Why are we doing so poorly, it appears, as far as business is concerned in St. Lucia, when we have so many people who have their masters and degrees and so on in business? We have so many students studying business at the tertiary level, South Louis Community College.
Are we doing poorly in business?
It appears so.
I don't know we're doing poorly. I think if you tell me that we need to have more of our resources employed, our unemployment level is high, I say yes. And every time I think of that, it bothers me a lot, because unemployment is not just unemployment of people. It is unemployment of resources. Capital is also left idle. So the unemployment is sad. It's a sickening thing. It ought not to happen. Everybody ought to be employed. So what is the problem? The problem is identifying activity that you could engage yourself in, and it is tradable. So there are lots of things you can do, but you may not be able to trade it, sell it.
Or do you think it's a case where those people have the book knowledge, and as far as the practicality of putting whatever they learned to good use, they cannot really do the conversion?
Well, it all depends on what you have your knowledge in. If you an accountant, you do accounting. Now, if you haven't got a business to do an accounting for, you won't be employed. So it doesn't mean you're a bad accountant. It just means you don't have sufficient businesses to provide your accounting services to. So what does it tell us? It tells us that the number of businesses we have need to expand, need to grow. We need new businesses, and that is in fact what we're talking about tonight: the need for creativity and innovation. Now, what are the possible areas of business we have in St. Lucia? Are we a country that will ever become a producer of a product that would serve the global market. I don't think so. I think we are persons who will have to produce. And when you look at our scale, our cost of doing business, cost of electricity, unless we come up with some and adapt some innovative ways of generating electricity, unless we look at our electricity legislation, our cost of production is high. It means our goods will normally fetch a higher price. So the type of goods we produce will have to be niche goods, perhaps higher priced goods, but with a differentiated type of nature to them. How many of that do we have? Fairly limited. We need to think a little more to create new things. There are opportunities right now. Again, as I say, the issue in our country also is one of the absence of systematic research and the application of the research. We have the season of guavas and mangoes and so forth, and we see those products being wasted. Why is that happening? You mean there's no
You think the private
research?
the private sector does not want to invest in that kind of operation?
I'm sure that if you when you say the private sector, if you're thinking of the commercial side of the private sector, I'm sure they would purchase the conversion of those mangoes into something that is edible, that can be traded. I'm sure they would. I'm sure markets overseas would be willing to taste and our pureed mango or golden apple, whatever it is. But again, you need to have some system that is able to do the research, do the necessary biological and microbiological
But why is it taking us
studies
so long to do that?
Same push.
I'm sure that we have people who are trained in those things, people who maybe would have studied at the St. Augustine campus of UWI.
Yes. And some of these activities require the investment of capital, which may not necessarily be recovered. So that's where the state comes in. Now, I understand that there is a national lab that will be established pretty soon through the Ministry of Agriculture to do a lot of that type of research and analysis. You see, because there are some things that need to be provided, at least in the first instance, until the private sector sees it is beneficial to do it and they get paid for it. Because people don't take the money and put it into something where they get nothing out of it. So there are what people call market failure. There's no market for this particular activity. So that's where the state should be coming in, provide the research, so that an entrepreneur now can take the outcome of that research and put this into practice. So we need that type of support at the state level.
Let's talk about the Chamber of Commerce, for example, recently indicating via a press release that there's need for government to provide the requisite support to business enterprises, because you have a number of foreign interests coming to St. Lucia and they're getting incentives and concessions, but none for the locals.
I don't know if that is accurate. The reason why I say so is that if you look at the legislation we have in place in St. Lucia, it does not discriminate in terms of granting foreign entities any particular concession above local entities. I think in many instances our domestic persons have not come forward to take advantage of what is available. I think that is perhaps one of the first step, as I said very early, is taking a step to find out, taking a step to see, can I get access to? And when a foreign investor comes into our country and the government treats that foreign investor, depending on the level of investment in a particular way, in any government, any administration generally looks at what they call, what is the net benefit to the state of doing it. I, in my experience, don't know that the administrations I have seen treat domestic investors in a more shoddy manner than foreign investors. What might be different is that the existing legislation to grant incentives and to grant concessions might be too restricted or might be too narrow. So, for instance, we have a Fiscal Incentives Act that is focused on production of granting incentives to persons involved in producing goods. Under the services sector, what we have in place is a Services Act only for tourism. So tourism has an act where if you are involved in tourism, you can get concessions. But what about other services? This is where we are right now. So we are at the point where we are reviewing the Fiscal Incentives Act, and we want to incorporate in there a regime to deal with services. So you have your creative industries, for instance. Should we not be incentivizing your musicians so that the equipment they purchase when they can get it in duty free? That will be a major boost. Should we not be working with our health and wellness sector, your spas? And at least when you establish in your spa, you can get your equipment, your laboratory services, your dental services. Why don't we get... Now, when you begin that process, here's what's going to happen. So we need to have an incentive regime that supports the services sector, just as we have over many, many years supporting the goods sector. If St. Lucia plays its cards right, if we do the work we need to do with our human resource by getting them properly trained, here is where we can position ourselves. With our incentive regime, we could say, for instance, that we want to be the center, the best place for all radiology type services. So if we have, and if the government understands that, and we say, let us provide the incentives for people to bring on the latest equipment for radiology, then persons from around the region may not need to necessarily go and invest in that. They can come here and get their radiology services done. I use radiology. It could be any other service. Professional services, your accountants, your architects, your lawyers. These persons also, if we can provide services, incentives to them to help them establish higher quality services and provide better quality, persons might decide, apart from St. Lucians, let me fly over here to get those services. So, Tim, where we are at now is we need to have an incentive regime that treats services and goods in proper manner.
What is happening for Business Month this month?
Oh, yes. We heard this, Stephen, to talk about that also. Well, this month, today we launched Business Month officially, and we have a calendar of activities pretty packed. I can just give you a flavor of what we have, for instance. Tomorrow is the 2nd, we'll be hosting an information workshop for exhibitors who will be taking part in the 10th annual St. Lucia Taiwan exhibition. Now, November is a critical month for us because this is the month also where we have Global Entrepreneurship Week. Now, that's an activity that is focused, handled by the Chamber of Commerce. So during Business Month, what we've done is we've worked with a number of partners who are having events of their own, but all also focused on the business sector. So we're working with the Chamber of Commerce during that month as they host Global Entrepreneurship Week. We're working with the Coalition of Services. Between the 6th and the 9th, the St. Lucia Coalition of Services Industries will host another of its series of export development training programs dubbed the Services Go Global. We believe and we know that services is where we have perhaps our greatest strength as a country, and therefore exporting your services is important to earn foreign exchange, but more importantly to broaden your market. We have arrangements in our agreements on the Economic Partnership Agreement. How do we get access to the European market? That is what this training is about.
With regard to the EPA, are we reaping any success? The
Measured.
EPA was signed in 2008, 2009, thereabout.
Correct. The success is very measured. I wouldn't call it a success by any stretch of the imagination. At the time we signed the EPA, one of the main reasons was for our banana industry. And we know the story of that right now. The other area we could have taken advantage of is services. But what we've discovered is that market access is different to market presence. Yes, you may be able to go into a country to, quote unquote, provide architectural services. But here's what they will say to you. In that particular country, to provide that services, your architect must be recognized. The training level. So we now have to go for what they call mutual recognition agreements. And they say to you, well, okay, we don't just want St. Lucia's architects to have an agreement with our architects in Europe. We want the entire CARIFORUM region to have one recognition system. So you understand. So while you might have negotiated market access, you don't necessarily have market presence.
And take, for example, consultants. My understanding is that, for example, you'd be given a work permit for a few months.
And that's the problem.
And when you would want a contract for about, let's say, 2 years, but then you'd be given 3 to 6 months maybe, and then maybe to reapply or return to the Caribbean and so on. So basically, we're not operating at a level playing field.
We're
but
not.
the other activities coming up.
Yes, and Tim, it's a very good thing you made this observation, because these are what they call non-tariff barriers, but they are barriers that frustrate what you think you're getting.
Yeah.
For instance, we also have during Global Entrepreneurship Week from the 13th to the 19th. That this year, this is where we are looking at Global Entrepreneurship Week. That the Chamber is the one leading on that, 13th to the 19th. We have work that focuses on standards, working with the Bureau of Standards. So we have, for instance, the Department of Commerce will deliver a presentation on standards for soap manufacturers, and that is on the 15th. I mentioned the St. Lucia Taiwan Trade Exhibition from the 24th, I believe it is. That's a Thursday until the 26th of November. The University of the West Indies, the St. Lucia Alumni Association, they're hosting an activity on the 23rd, panel discussion, which will look at the trade and economic implications of Brexit for St. Lucia. And that is going to be a program done with the University of the West Indies, with certain persons on a panel to discuss the matter. Brexit is critical for us. Most of our trade with Europe at St. Lucia is actually with the UK. We have a workshop on effective customer service for vendors and successful bidding for contractors. That will be held on the 21st and 22nd of November, and that is being put together by the St. Lucia Small Business Association. So you have the Chamber, the St. Lucia Small Business Association, the Coalition of Services. All of these business support organizations are having activities during Business Month focused on one, advertising what services they have to offer, and also providing direct skills. A very important activity that this year we're putting into the program is going to take place on the 28th. We have the Department of Commerce in conjunction with the Trade Export Promotion Agency, TIPA, and the European Union the office out of Barbados will be hosting a CARIFORUM EU Economic Partnership Agreement workshop. So there'll be a workshop, a one-day workshop on the 28th, which will look at how St. Lucians, how business persons can take advantage of the EPA. And that is being done in collaboration with Caribbean Export, the EU, TIPA, and the Ministry of Commerce. We expect to have persons, at least 60 persons, attending that. And that is focused on persons or businesses that are either already exporting or are near exporting and wish to take advantage of the EU market. And this is a very important thing for us because we're now looking at Business Month, not just focusing on what we can do internally, but how we can get out there.
Time for break. You're watching Newsmaker Live on DBS Television. When we come back, your calls once again for my guest. He is the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Commerce, Mr. Titus Previll. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. We'll put a telephone number on screen right now so that you can call with your questions and comments for my guest. Once again, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Commerce, Mr. Titus Previll, as we continue to observe the third annual Business Month in St. Lucia, and that is under the theme Promoting an Entrepreneurial Culture, Innovation and Creativity. So call us right now for my guest, the PS in the Ministry of Commerce. I understand that we have a call on line. Hello, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening to you, sir.
Hi, my question is regarding the duty-free bar concessions. I heard the announcement tonight that there will be a 100% waiver. My question is, in terms of persons sending out monies and you realize persons are actually traveling to, purchase items to send to St. Lucia, how effective is this in terms of our economy? We realize people are actually selling out their cash rather than buying locally. Has this actually benefited us in any way?
Okay. Can you repeat again, please?
I'm asking regarding the duty-free concession
On the barrels.
on the barrels.
Yeah.
Has this actually benefited us? Because I've recognized that it is more expensive at the port to offload containers. That's one, because most of these containers are offloaded on overtime. And you find quite a few persons actually sending monies out and not patronizing the local business places. So my question is, have this actually benefited us?
Okay. Thank you so much for calling, sir.
Thank you.
The issue is the policy decision of the government to at Christmas time.
Yeah, Mr. Producer, please send that first. We have some disturbance. Yeah,
Right.
go ahead.
Right. I was saying the issue is whether the policy decision of the government, the state, to grant barrels at Christmas
Concessions,
time,
yeah.
concessions on barrels, is it impacting the private sector? Of course it is. Of course it is impacting the private sector, because at that time you have basically persons are exercising the option to go direct and not go through the intermediary of the private sector. But this is for a specific period of time in the year, and it is a matter that the administrations need to, and they have looked at it, I believe, and they believe it is a time they're giving back, so to speak, to the public. So that's what the policy is. That's what it is.
Do we have another call on line? Once again, this is Newsmaker Live. Do you have another call? Okay. Let's look.
Good night, Tim.
Okay, we have a call on line. Good evening to you, caller.
Yeah, I think it's a very nice program. I want to really thank the PS for being here. As a matter of fact, I wish he had his recording secretary to help him so when he leaves the studio. Quite a lot of the things that were said, it can be submitted to the Honorable Cabinet of Ministers. Because, Tim, you did ask him some very important questions. And I think there is the need for St. Lucians and St. Lucia to be protected, irrespective of the conventions of OECS and CSME. I think I also want to draw to the attention of the peers that Dr. Arthur Lewis, he really wrote a fantastic documentary that we can implement to help our country. But for some unknown reason, neither the University of the West Indies or SOAT is really pushing that philosophy of commerce. And so maybe it's one of the reasons why the kids are also infused. And I think Singapore, we know that Singapore has really embraced it, and they're doing fantastically well, even better than some of the more developed countries in the world. So I want to suggest maybe the PS, I know you have great influence from what you've been saying, to have maybe the Cabinet of Ministers to reconsider the writings of Dr. Arthur Lewis, or Nobel laureate, have a serious library down in St. Lucia, and maybe we can have educational tourism in St. Lucia with the two laureates.
Okay,
and get some
thanks
of
a
the young
lot.
kids to come down to St. Lucia. The second thing I want to say,
Yeah, go quickly, please.
yes, Tim, I noticed you made some good points about some of the young kids and the innovation. The PS also made that note. And maybe we can get some of the money we are giving to the inmates at Baudelaire. I mean, these guys they have violated their freedom, and I think they should pay a little bit and become more disciplined and then be given the assistance to do CXC. But the kids who are outside, they're not in there. I think they should be given all the assistance. And when they have an idea or concept and they have qualified, they have graduated, they can get some fund as some support to give them inspiration. And the last thing, PS, I honestly think that there should be a fund either from the community of the commercial department, along with the Ministry of Education and maybe Agriculture, to put funds just aside for the implementation of innovations from the young people. And you believe me, I'm aggrieved to hear about the innovation or the introduction of the lights on the wicket by a St. Lucian. and we are not so sure it is patented. But I want to draw your attention to the fact that the picture, the James Bond pictures, there was a theme song for the last 20 years. That theme song was introduced by a black man in England. They never paid him any royalty. It went to court the year before last. He's a billionaire now. So it's not too late if this St. Lucian guy can receive some compensation for his innovative invention of the bill falling off the wicket and lighting. So it could really help glamorize cricket.
Thank you so much for calling, sir. What's the response? Quite a lot.
The caller said quite a lot. I was trying to recall now exactly some of his points. But I think the thrust of his argument, one of the key elements was on how we can embrace some of the writings and teachings of Sir Arthur in helping shape our economic development. And that's great. But there is something else that happens in Singapore that we need to look at also, is the culture of the people. The level of discipline. They do what they have to do every day in, day out. They drive on the right side of the road. they don't litter the city and the country, and they don't put gum on. So basically, it might sound very trivial, but things cannot happen in an environment of indiscipline.
We have a call. Good evening. Thanks for holding on. Go ahead, please.
Hi. Good evening.
Good evening to you, sir.
Good night, Permanent Secretary.
Hi, good night.
Permanent Secretary, I believe, first of all, let me compliment you and your Department of Commerce in the efforts into helping the commercial sector in St. Lucia. You spoke about small CEDU, you spoke about Chamber of Commerce, all of these places, right? All these things. You spoke even about our educational system. I note from one that I know most of the secondary schools, they teach about tourism in secondary schools. Yet, in the syllabus, in about 4 different subjects, they have questions on cooperatives as well as on consumer rights, because in the CARICOM treaty, you would know that in Protocol 8, there's talk about consumer protection. So every year we see questions coming up on consumer protection. You, I believe, would be familiar with this quote. Consumers, by definition, include us all. They are the largest economic group in the economy, affecting and affected by almost every public and private economic decision. 2/3 of all spending in the economy is by consumers, but they are the only important group in the economy who are not effectively organized, whose views are often not heard. The federal government, by nature, the highest spokesman for all the people, has a special obligation to be alert to the consumer's needs and to advance the consumer's interests. All right? I thank you. Aware of this quote?
I am, sir.
All right. Vice President Kennedy, what is your department? Because I believe apart from commerce, you also call the Department of Consumer Affairs.
Correct.
Is doing to promote that citation by President Kennedy? Because I think Team Now would be aware that every year we celebrate World Consumer Rights Day.
And we talk about the protection bill, the consumer protection bill.
Yes, Tim. It's no longer a bill, Tim. It's an act now.
Right.
It's an act of Parliament.
Right.
You know. So what is your department doing? Because without the consumers, as President Kennedy rightly pointed out, right, there's no business. So whilst we're there, we're glorifying business, etc., and how they do well, the business plans. Tim is saying that. But without the consumers, there's no business. They cannot be successful. What is your department, that the consumer arm of your department, doing to help consumers in St. Lucia?
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Well, I really wanted to focus on business, but I'll sidestep quickly to say to the caller that the ministry is doing what it has done, and I think doing very well. Well, you have an act right now. The act is not promulgated because there were some inputs that we were supposed to have gotten from the private sector. that ought to have gone into the act. So when the act was passed, the Parliament passed the act, but there was a stay on the promulgation simply because there were some issues raised or concerns raised just at the time when the act was being passed in the Parliament. So I think then Prime Minister Anthony said, okay, well, we'll go through, but we will then hold back. It's been a while now.
But my apologies to you, sir. We have to take another call.
Yeah.
Okay, we lost the call, but go ahead.
It's been a while now. So we need to get the act promulgated. But to go to what the ministry is doing, the ministry has been involved and continues to be involved in public education throughout the length and breadth of this country, in the schools and so forth. And the ministry offers every year a subvention to the Consumer Association.
National Consumer Association. You have a call. Good evening. This is Newsmaker Live. You're on the air.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Yes. The feedback. Take care of that for me, please. Yeah, go ahead.
For many years, themes and situations and so on, and such discussions as Dr. Preval is talking about now. This has to be done. We have to do this. And we are not moving ahead at all with it. And we have scores of young people, even secondary school, doing nothing. To the extent now it is drugs that's been prescribed and suggested by the politicians themselves that should be on the market for them to be able to smoke. We only talking and talking. We know all of what you're saying there, practically, if not theoretically. But look, how are we going to go ahead with what you're proposing? Very good idea. Very good. But when you leave team tonight, what comes up tomorrow? We have this incentive to make foreigners citizens. They come with their money. They come with their own employees. And we have been experiencing that for a few years now. You go around cafes now. There's hardly a St. Lucian who owns the major stores as well as the small ones. People tend to venture around into the streets. The trees are removed. Okay, it's good for tourism and whatnot to see our streets are neat. But what do we have for these mothers and fathers to help those children who go into secondary school, and when they leave, nothing for them but the drug trade, or idling about and killing one another? The people, there needs to be this kind of cohesive effort, binding with yours, and don't send you alone. We need more than that. There's no action. We have cocoa talking about guava early on. The ordinary farmers just cutting the guava trees when they're clearing the land. Look at tamarind. Eh? My days as a little boy, they used to export that to Barbados. Is it not a shame that Barbados is so creative, who not produce nothing when it comes to agriculture? We have all at large, when we cutlass in, no respect, because we don't know the value of them. When will we ask all the incentives are going to the foreigners? The banks are in people's throats, messing up people. But we have the natural resource, the natural goods, the natural plants, the natural produce.
Caller, Mr. Preville wants to...
Somebody went into that, a few persons.
Mr. Preville wants to engage you, caller. Just hold on. Mr. Preville wants to engage you. Go ahead.
Anyway, I'm through. He understands what I'm saying there.
Okay. Thanks a lot, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because it's nonsense happening in St. Lucia, and politicians forming the act.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Go ahead.
Tim, the truth of the matter is that if there is an opportunity to convert something into economic good, should you wait for somebody else to do it if you can see it, if it is there to be done? I think no. I think one of the biggest problems we have that the caller perhaps has not mentioned is access to finance. I think that is really one of the biggest issues, because I'm sure persons have seen the tamarind and assuming that we would have the technology, and in today's world the technology is available to do so many things. What we're discovering, two major issues. One, access to finance is a matter, and two, and the caller raised it in terms of the foreign investor comes in if it's worker, the quality of our labor force, the skills of our labor force. That is a real issue, because when an investor comes in and he has a deadline by which he wants his plant up and running, he says, I want workers. I want workers who will get up in the morning, show up on time, and work for a number of hours.
Hold on.
Excuse me one more time.
Hi, good evening. Hello.
Yeah, sir.
Okay. Do you want to make a contribution, caller?
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Hello?
Okay. Go ahead,
I
Mr.
can't
Breville.
hear you.
Go ahead, Mr. Breville.
Yes,
Go ahead.
so I'm saying that this is...
Hello?
Thank you so much. Go ahead, Mr. Breville. Please, Mr. Producer, let's allow Mr. Breville to go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying the problem, team, is that about the quality. One of our major constraints is the quality of our workforce. Now, the way to address that is we need to look at our technical vocational educational training program. Time and effort needs to be spent in building the skills of those persons and having those skills certified. We are in an OECS environment. We are in a CARICOM environment. If in our domestic space at any time we cannot have sufficient economic activity to employ persons, but if you are skilled, you could move about and get and be employed in your skill area, but you must be certified. So at a national level, attention must be given to your technical vocation and educational training programs.
We have a call. Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air. Hello.
Yes, sir.
Good evening to you, sir. You're on the air.
Dr. Preville.
Hello.
Dr. Preville.
Not Dr. Preville, Mr. Preville.
Mr. Preville.
Yes, that's me. Good night, yes.
Yes. You rebutting, but you're talking about finance first. I can tell you about the banks and finance. I can tell you. And I'll meet you again because we have not met for. It's messy. And the skills you're talking and so on, the young people don't have properties. They have to come with properties and so on to get the money, even if they have the plan. And parents will try for them with a little piece of property. Still they get in the fits tied and everything like that. But I think the politicians, you have to give them to make things easier, more easily achievable and so on for the young people. Because their parents, once they touch 60, they can't get nothing again, but they have some property. And they too have tried, and they got messed up. Another thing, certain bank manager, according to my experience, tried was to get we the locals to put our heads together to order together, and specific mentions were made about the Syrians and the Indians and the Chinese. They have taken over for offshore, for sure. It's more difficult for us now. Your plan now that should have been at least 20 years ago, right? Like when the man who doing all the processing and whatnot from Guyana, what's his name again? Or Byron Foods came around this time, right? That was our time. Now it's more difficult. And you mentioned the skills we must have. It's our children that have the skills. If they know their parents can afford to help them out, because they went to secondary school. People like me didn't go to secondary school to know the sciences and so on. However, I am saying now we are very late. And for us to make any move, instead of talking, get to the politicians. Don't be afraid of your position, because they like to victimize when they see you on your heels. On the heels, in fact.
Okay. Thank you.
Let's make an effort. Get up from that and stop mirroring yourself to us.
Okay, thank you so much for calling, sir.
Get to them and come back and report to us on team.
All right.
Team always taking the risk.
Thank you.
Next thing is transfer him. He has another job.
Appreciate your contribution. Thank you. Mr. Privy, let's continue the discussion. I wanted to speak to you a little bit about the ease of doing business. That's an area of concern for people. Huh?
Yes.
I don't know if you have sufficient time. We just have about 7 more minutes left on the program. Do we have another call on line? No. Okay, quickly. The ease of doing business. What are the impediments? How are we doing in that regard? Are we making any kind of progress?
Yes, we well, I don't want to say we're making progress and you get a report that says we've got worse. But basically the ease of doing business approach is that you have 190 countries in the world, and there are 10 areas that they are scored, they are measured against. Now, St. Lucia ranked number 1 in CARICOM from 2007 until 2014, and then Jamaica. Now we are ranked number 86 in the world. Jamaica is ranked number 67, but Jamaica is the number 1 country in CARICOM, and we are number 2. Now, what is happening here is that there are a number of the 10 areas that are measured: starting a business, paying taxes. There are 10 of them. I can't remember all at the top of my head. I refer to the document. But we are doing, as St. Lucia that is, the government has set up a task force. There is a reform strategy. There is a reform agenda. We are going through each of the 10 measures and undertaking changes in those measures to cause us to be at the cutting edge as best as we can be. These things take some time because some of these reforms require legislative changes, a number of other changes. Some of them require the overhaul of entire institutions. For instance, trading across borders. We have the situation at the Port Authority. We have a situation where we have a relationship between the port and its stevedores that is steeped in tradition for many years. You literally have to overhaul the stevedoring relationship with the port to treat with this aspect of trading across borders. Now, to deal with that, you have to look at a number of considerations. There are social and economic fallout that can come from this, the changes you need to make. So these are ongoing. So we have work being done. We have introduced the commercial court to give greater predictability in terms of enforcing contracts. So changes are being done as we speak in all 10 areas. If another country is making changes at a more rapid pace than us, then we shall, relative to them, fall back. So we are pushing ahead hard. We're doing whatever we can do. We are working with the for the Caribbean Growth Forum. We've undertaken what they call a rapid results initiative, where we've identified certain specific activities we want outcomes in within 100 days. So a number of things have happened. So I'm hoping come the next review, St. Lucia is going to see results of St. Lucia scoring much better.
My final question: crime and its negative impact on the business sector. How much of a concern is that for your ministry?
A big concern.
And for business people.
A very, very big concern. And the Chamber of Commerce, in their engagements with the minister, continue to draw that to his attention. Now, this is something that we don't have direct control over. But we know that if you are in a free market economy and you have crime in your business sector, it affects the business people in many ways. Directly, when your business is attacked. But more importantly, when your customers are afraid of coming in the area where you conduct business, you have a huge problem. And it is a vicious cycle, because when people, businesses shut down, where do these people go? Do they join the criminals? What happens? So you have a serious problem. Crime is a serious problem that must be tackled. And I think I heard the Minister for Justice this evening highlighting that. Tim, before we go, I just thought I wanted to highlight at least two other activities I think that are of importance to us during the week. We will be having on the 23rd, I should get it clear, on the 22nd rather, we'll be launching the Southern Business Association That will be of the formal launch of the Southern Business Association on 22nd, followed by the launch of the Business Support Unit of the St. Lucia Coalition of Services Industries on the 23rd. And basically these are efforts being made to reach out to the private sector to provide services to our business persons. I also want to mention that the National Youth Council is working with us also. The young people are working with us, and it is important to have the youth from the tenderest, the most tender age involved in conceptualizing and seeing themselves as business partners. So junior achievement, very, very important in our work. So we're trying to take a holistic approach. We will culminate our activity on the 30th of November with a CEO's breakfast, which is aimed at bringing together the financial sector representatives at one high-level meeting where we want to discuss with them, and that has been facilitated by the OAS, to sit and discuss with them some of the issues of finance that continue to dog and frustrate business persons, either existing or persons wishing to come into business.
PS in the Ministry of Commerce, Mr. Titus Preble, thank you so much for being my guest on this evening's Newsmaker Live.
Thank you for having me, Tim.
As always, thank you so much for watching the broadcast and contributing via your calls. If it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live. Time now for the clip that peaked.
My friends are small, I can't understand. Woman say that dildo better than man. Dildo, I want dildo, it's a dildo. Oh, them girl love it so. My friends are small, I can't understand. Woman say that dildo better than man. Now the woman says she love, she dildo galore. It's what she buys anyway, and $10 store. One of them say, oh, she wanted dildo for free. She get a taxi and drop out down by something. The next one say, oh, she then want them shipping at all. Because any dildo she buys, that must make she fall. And she doesn't worry about that thing. Because she dildo the slide down straight from foreign. It's a dildo. I want to know. What are you talking about? There's a dildo in box, dildo in plastic. Them that make out that glass, them that break through. Some will rubber, some will fantasy. Yeah, it is like it. I did girl can't breathe. She take a ferry from Tobago down to Trinity. And the captain from Trinity flies to Miami. So when she comes back home, no quarreling, fucking and fight. So she tell people, it's dildo she likes. Dildo, I want to know. Lado, oh them girl have it stuff. I think that's what I can understand. Woman say that dildo better than mine. Yeah, man.
Again, as the broadcasters, a very good evening. My name is Timothy Polion saying good night.